Here he is, Jeremy Corbyn.
Put the TV on and seeing the hung parliament, like, I literally jumped up in the air and screamed. I was ecstatic.
Even more inspiring was the number of young people who got involved for the very first time.
They've really overlapped into pop culture and music really well in this election, so it's really attractive even if you don't know much about their actual policies.
Because they were fed up with being denigrated, fed up with being told they don't matter, fed up with being told they never participate.
Got a certain cult thing going on at the moment with the chanting, and I think because he's a character and he doesn't really, he's not got spin doctors around him trying to be one thing or another. It's quite genuine.
On the 18th of April, Conservative Prime Minister Theresa May announced a snap general election.
I have just chaired a meeting of the Cabinet where we agreed that the government should call a general election to be held on the 8th of June.
It had only been 2 years since the last general election. Unsurprisingly, a lot of the public weren't that happy about this.
You're joking. Not another one? Oh, for God's sake, I can't stand this. There's too much politics going on at the moment. Why does she need to do it?
So why did Theresa May call the election now? The main reason is because of Brexit. The UK will leave the EU on the 29th of March 2019, and with fixed terms in Parliament, that would give the Tories less than a year to win back public opinion and show that their negotiations in Brexit were actually successful. By having the election now, it gives the Tories 2 years after Brexit to regain public opinion. There are other reasons too. Firstly, Theresa May wasn't the elected leader of the Conservatives when they won the last general election, and making massive changes like Brexit questions her legitimacy. Perhaps more importantly for the Conservatives, they were up in the opinion polls, and by quite a long way too. Some polling companies estimated a 20 percentage point gap between the Tories and Labour. Tory landslide seemed inevitable and proved irresistible to Theresa May. With that kind of majority, May's plans for Brexit would be protected, even from her own party. Brexit has been a dividing issue, splitting parties, and with a significant majority, even if some of May's backbenchers went against her, her plans would still go through. So, after 3 weeks of campaigning by all the parties, the UK had a general election. But this year things were a little different, and not just because dogs at polling stations trended on Twitter. For the first time in history, the youth vote was higher than the average turnout. In 2010, just 52% of 18 to 24-year-olds voted, and in 2015 this only rose to 58%. But this year, 72% of young people voted. Of all those young voters, a staggering 6 out of 10 of them voted for Labour. If this were the only demographic voting, then Labour would have had a huge landslide victory. What actually happened was it caused there to be a hung parliament. The Conservatives lost 13 seats and lost their majority, while Labour gained 30. So what actually happened? Why were young people so attracted to Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party? I contacted Caroline Hill of Young Labour to find out more. So Caroline, what's your role at Young Labour?
National Chair of Young Labour, which means I'm Chair of the National Committee. I'm also kind of the figurehead of Young Labour, so I will represent Young Labour abroad as well.
In 2010, 42% of 18-24s voted in the election, and then this year, 72% voted. So there's obviously a massive increase, and 60% of those people voted for Labour. So what do you think were the key reasons that so many young people decided to vote this time, and the vast majority of them for Labour?
I think you need to look at it at a couple of angles, because the increase increase in young people voting is not simply just a result of policy. I think the Brexit referendum actually has a lot to account for in this, because obviously turnout in the Brexit referendum of young people was not as significant, and I think there was a kind of not backlash. I'm not going to call it backlash because that's like a negative word, and that actually turned out quite well for us. But I think young people finally realised that actually voting can have a really immediate effect on the way their lives are run, and I think that came to play in this general election, because the increase of young people, I think, has to do with that result, whether they were for it or against it. I think policy. Labour was able to talk about policy this time on like a wide range of platforms. A lot of people account increased youth turnout to things like tuition fees, but I don't think that is necessarily like top of the list. Like, tuition fees is something that people find important, especially considering like universities becoming such an unattainable goal for some people. But actually, I think talking about housing is really important, because young people they're not even able to consider having a house these days, and talking about housing building programs is important. Talking about what's going on with the NHS, like, you'd have to be blind to think that the waiting times and the working conditions of the NHS are acceptable.
I also wanted to find out what regular young voters had found so attractive about Jeremy Corbyn, and whether these views aligned with Caroline's. I first met with Ruby French, who was just about to start her first year of university. What was the most attractive thing about Labour for you?
As a young person, I think their policies with tuition fees are probably the most attractive. I'd say, as somebody going to university, I'll come out of it in like 50 grand debt with the maintenance loan, because it's not a grant anymore. I think that would be it, and they've really like overlapped into pop culture and music really well in this election, so it's really attractive. Even if you don't know much about their actual policies, they've become like really big with young people. So
did the Conservatives have any policies that you thought would attract young people?
I think they would have policies that attract young people, but only quite like middle class young people, especially with their policies about 0-hour contracts, and Labour wants to scrap them. And I think a lot of middle class young people think they're a really good thing to have, because it just means you can work whenever you want, really. But if you're poor, you understand that actually 0-hour contracts can be really damaging. They're not good, but I don't think much else really would attract a young person to voting Conservative unless they were quite middle class.
Do you think Theresa May was more interested in the older vote than the younger vote last election?
Yeah, I definitely think so. She didn't really target young people at all. But then again, when she brought in like the dementia tax, I don't really know what she was going for with that one. But I think she definitely really targeted older people and older working people especially. There was no campaign for young Conservative voters, I don't feel.
I next talked to Annie Hatley, who runs Young Labour in Norwich. Why do young voters find Jeremy Corbyn so attractive?
I don't think young voters know of policies as much, because they don't use traditional media as much. So I think it's more a feeling. I think Jeremy Corbyn's doing really well at the moment, being in media generally and just speaking for a kinder society. And I think that appeals to young voters more. They've seen a lot of things cut, a lot of people targeted. They've seen Brexit happen, and I think the things that they want is a more open, inclusive society, and I think that's what Labour is promoting at present. I think these are our policies and we'll tell them to you. I think Labour have been more open and say, what do you want? What do you want to see from the society?
Jeremy Corbyn's been an MP for some time now, but it's only until recently that he's had such popularity. I wanted to know how young people had found out about him, although I had a pretty good idea already.
The first time I ever heard of Jeremy Corbyn was on social media.
This is Dale Brooks, a primary school teacher in Norwich. How much social media do you see during the election, and were you involved in sharing it at all?
I mean, I always make a conscious effort to sort of share that information. I think I know our generation especially spends a lot of time on social media, and it has a lot of a lot of passion invested in it and a lot of time invested into it. So I think for us that's a really key tool. But I've made more conscious effort now, you know, as the years gone by. My extended family has joined Facebook, and colleagues on Facebook. I always try to make a more conscious effort to share things, and I try and share independent articles, BBC News articles, Guardian articles, to try and, you know, sort of broaden, not just share Jeremy Corbyn 4 PM Facebook page post, because obviously that's sort of, someone would see that and go off, whatever. But, you know, try and share the more sort of factual, more sort of neutral stuff. But I think that has a huge impact, surely. I mean, the first time I ever heard of Jeremy Corbyn was on social media.
Unsurprisingly, social media played a big part in engaging young people with Jeremy Corbyn and Labour. I was also interested in how young people had been targeted by Labour in their social media campaign. I met with Simon Partridge, who ran Norwich Labour's social media campaign at the last election. What kind of social media targeting were you doing at the last election?
So Facebook, Twitter, that's where my main focus was, because that's quite important these days, we think anyway. So yeah, that's what I was doing.
And how were you targeting? What kind of people were you targeting with that social media campaign?
So we were trying to capture the younger people on Twitter, older people on Facebook. That's the way it kind of works. So we had a lot of targeted ads and stuff like that, different demographics. On Twitter, we make graphics and memes and all sorts of silly things like that, but kind of got the message out. Made things a lot more accessible, I think, and a little bit more interesting for younger voters, we thought anyway.
I was, however, a little sceptical. Jeremy Corbyn's been seen as this straight-talking, genuine man who's been making excellent promises for young people. Things like getting rid of zero-hour contracts, talking about extending housing, and also dealing with tuition fees. This image and these messages have been massively multiplied over social media. It created a sort of cult following behind Jeremy Corbyn, despite the fact that he didn't win the last election, or indeed is standing by all of the commitments he made during it.
If you're a young voter and you heard those words, "I will deal with it," you might have thought, Jeremy Corbyn is going to relieve me of my debt, but you won't.
What I said was we would deal with it by trying to reduce the burden of it. We never said we would completely abolish it, because we were unaware of the size at that time.
I was interested to know what Caroline's response would be to this. Jeremy Corbyn is very much seen as being this sort of straightforward, straight-talking politician, unlike the normal type of politician that people see. And yet, on the Andrew Marr show, several weeks after the election, he did what a lot of people have dubbed as a U-turn on tuition fees and maintenance grants. He said that that was never really going to happen, and yet that was actually put into the Labour manifesto.
Over the past few months, a lot of people have been saying, oh, he's backtracked on this, he's backtracked on that. Jeremy Corbyn is one man in a party of 500,000 people. We're a democratic party. We decide our policy democratically, which is why when people will sometimes bring up, for example, nuclear policy and say, well, Jeremy Corbyn doesn't believe in that, but he's saying that he will continue Trident investment. Well, that's because actually, even I don't believe in that, but the Labour Party has voted for it with the support of many unions, and that's the direction that we go in, because one man does not decide our policy, and actually the shadow cabinet and the many people surrounding him have a lot to play on that, and that's politics, democracy in progressive politics is important.
Whatever you do think of Corbyn, whether you think he's a genuine one-of-a-kind politician or one with a well-cultivated media image, it's hard to deny what he achieved at the last election. He got young people to vote and engage in politics, and he showed a generation of people their vote did matter and actually counted for something.